Hello, and welcome back to Putting the Story in History. And today we're going to talk about something that's, I think, is super relevant to some things happening right now in the United States. So if people don't tell you that history is irrelevant to current modern day events, they're wrong. I could go on forever about that, but we'll just stick to that. They aren't right. Anyway, so if you guys have been following the news at all, a completely unqualified white man wrote an op-ed in the Washington Journal, I think, basically telling our incoming first lady to no longer go by the title of doctor, which she has definitely earned. And that really got me thinking about other times in history where women have been told that their accomplishments don't matter, um, or that their opinions or their voices aren't really uh, good enough. Which is ridiculous, especially with Dr. Jill. She's the most, if not the second most, to Michelle Obama, educated first lady we've ever had. Right, those two are pretty much tied for the most educated first women we've had. Maybe, yeah, pretty much. Right, so those two are up there, and they're incredibly qualified. So this guy clearly doesn't know what he's talking about. But it got me thinking, and I thought what came to mind was the Salem Witch Trials, which is kind of the first major historical incidents in the United States, quote unquote, right, where women are um, put down for these sort of things, for their accomplishments, for their voices, for the rights that they have. So let's talk a little bit about the Salem Witch Trials in this video, kind of paint a picture. If you've ever read the play, The Crucible, it's based off of this historical thing. So if you've read that, you'll know a little bit about it already. You'll have some background information. Otherwise, that's okay. I do recommend that you read it. It's not my favorite play, but it is for the most part generally accurate. So might as well, if you're interested in that sort of thing, take a look at it. So the Salem Witch Trials, basically, it was all the way back in the 1600s, around 1692, and 200 people, the majority of them, of course, being women, were accused of witchcraft in Massachusetts. And it was a time of mass hysteria. So if you imagine like the Red Scare, or the Islamophobic scare after 9/11, those sorts of things, it was basically that level of hysteria, but back in 1692, obviously. Some background for why this was happening. Um, Massachusetts was run by um, a particular religious sect, which has a very profound influence on American social norms and cultural norms, and on honestly government norms as well. The Puritans. The Puritans were an extremely conservative group of Anglicans, who were actually persecuted and kicked out of England for being too ridiculous, like too over too conservative basically for regular English folk. And so they came to the United States, and well, it wasn't the United States yet, but they came to the Massachusetts colony, and they kind of took over things there. And the one view that really kind of leads to this incident that they had was that Puritans believe that women are inherently sinful. Hmm, where has that come up before in anything in the United States ever, right? So this view has obviously persisted in some sense through American history, but this is directly going to be what kind of causes this witch trial to kind of get out of hand. Now, in the non-Puritan sense, there are a lot of politics going on in Salem at the time, about land rights, about the church, and of course, the town was changing. It was no longer just an agricultural town. It was becoming more mercantile. They had markets. They were making processed goods. They weren't all just farmers anymore. So there were these big changes happening, and the people in this town were having trouble processing these changes. So these sorts of things are also kind of in the backdrop of this trial, what's happening with this mass hysteria. Okay, so let's talk about the timeline a little bit. So in 1692, these two young girls start to have fits that they think they're possessed, basically. And so, of course, the town, which is incredibly religious, is like, oh my gosh, the devil's in them. The devil's come for our children. What are we going to do? And so after this, three people are accused of witchcraft. And based on historical findings, we find that a lot of the people, some of the people who were accused were probably due to some sort of family feud that was occurring between major prominent families in the town. So the three people who were accused of witchcraft initially are a woman named Sarah Good, and a woman named Sarah Osborne, and then another woman named Tituba. Now these three women, okay, have some things in common. So I'm going to talk about each one individually, and then we can talk about some of their similarities. Sarah Good was destitute, and she had a reputation of being kind of an outcast and unworthy. Sarah Osborne, she didn't really attend church, um, and she was willing to kind of do things in her own self-interest, which is not a puritanical thing to do. And then finally, Tituba was black, and she was a slave. So these three people, right, all had these traits that made them, in ways, either social or racial outcasts in this white, extremely religious town. And so these women could easily be pegged as people that they could say, we're going to blame this problem on them. We can get rid of them, and then that'll make our town better because these people are elements that we don't want around. Um, Obviously, right? The ability now to target and take out outcasts or women, specifically, um, who who didn't fit into the norms of the time, um, became a big factor in this. So now in March, so this is like about a month later, they end up accusing more women of witchcraft. And these women, Martha Corey and Rebecca Nurse, were actually full members of the Puritan church. So these people went to church daily. They were very righteous. They followed all the rules. They were like the ideal Puritan women. But the big kicker here, right, is that they were skeptical of these accusations. They didn't believe that there was actually any witchcraft going on. They thought these women were innocent, and they made their opinions heard, which was not something that they were really supposed to do, right? And so they were ended up being accused as well. Now, over the course of the next several months, right, all these other people end up being accused and put on trial. Now these trials were shams. There was not really any evidence. There wasn't any rule of law. There weren't jurors. There weren't lawyers. It was mostly just kind of people being questioned and then decided if they were guilty or not. And because of these trials, about 20 people are executed for the crime of witchcraft. Now, that is just crazy, right? That these trials, one, even occurred, but then two, that they ended up killing 20 people because of it. All right, they accused 200, they only end up killing 20. So, some of the implications of this. Well, one, okay, the women who are accused initially and then some of them afterwards are women who had some sort of authority or power. And authority or power means like they were inheriting their own land, or they were gaining the rights to inheritance, which was not very common back then, and the men in town wouldn't like to have women have that kind of authority. Or they were vulnerable or different, right? Like Tituba, one of the original women who were accused, was black. They didn't want her around, right? She didn't fit in. They didn't kind of she wasn't a part of this ideal puritanical society. Um, or there are women who are defined by their relationship to men, right? That was the goal at the end of this, right? Is that now women are being put into their place, and they're being defined by their relationship to men again. Um, Something that once again has continued to come up in American history, right? Women are expected to be defined by their relationship to men, which is absolutely ridiculous. Um, and that's continued to happen until today, obviously, right? The things that are happening to Jill Biden are the same kind of things, except obviously very less extreme than what were happening back in 1690. Okay, and then of course some political things, right? The people in charge of these trials, and accusations, right? They're maintaining their authority, and that's why people who were doubting these accusations and doubting the process of the trials were also arrested and executed. Um, and it was pretty much known by the people outside of Salem that these leaders of this town had lied and they were cowards and that they were killing innocent people, but it was just to maintain their power over this town, right? And these sorts of things are happening today with the coronavirus, right? The people who are in charge are saying that it's not real because they want to maintain what little authority they have, and so they're denying something that's real and existing, right? While these people are saying that something is happening that isn't, so they can maintain their power over women. Um, and then finally, right, they were able to reestablish property ownership in the hands of men. So women who did own property, most of them were the ones who got executed, and that property was able to then get back put into the fold of the men in town. And so they were able to kind of rectify the situation that they saw that wasn't correct. Um, so so like I was saying, right, the Salem Witch Trials is kind of this huge parallel to the kind of things that are happening to women today in the United States. And and this is really kind of the origin, not that it originated here, it's been happening forever, but at least in the United States, this sort of thing is what's happening on a regular basis. So thank you again for watching this episode of Putting the Story in History. Next time we'll talk about something new, maybe something lighter. Probably not, though. They're dark times, and a lot of dark times in history. But we'll see. I got to figure out what I want to talk about next. And when I do, you'll get to see it. So thank you again, and I'll see you later.